Okay, welcome everyone back to our Motzei Shabbos marathon, and tonight is a real marathon because we're going to be learning 3 blot tonight. We're ready for our second blot as we learn sponsored by A.B. Spry with the tefillah that all children should get into yeshiva easily without heartache to the parents, without any embarrassment, and also we want to learn special for our Dalia Engel. He's not on yet. He's going to be joining us soon. But we're going to learn for his Avram ben Gedalyo, that he should have, his neshama should have an aliyah on his yard site. We're now starting at the last word on the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Kosvei, if the get was written, v'oisvei b'kisasei, and he put it in his pocket. He wrote the get, he dated it, and then he put it in his pocket, hoping that maybe he'll be able to yet mollify her. The imefaisa, if he is able to appease her, to fayis, and then he won't give it. So what? And then if we say that he could give it later on, so then what did we benefit? What did they accomplish? He could then use it to cover up for her. So the Gemara says, people don't do that. A get is a very, very poisonous thing. And, we say, al tiftach pella satan, don't even suggest something, to write the get, go to a cipher and write it with his name, our name, the city that they live in, and all her nicknames and his nicknames, and with a date. He would be afraid to do it in case he won't do it. People don't do that ahead. Amalei Ravina Ravashi, this is a very easy question. The whole subject of what we're learning here. Gittin Daf Medina Sagam, a get that came from Asia to Eretz Yisrael. It's dated in Nisan, and it's not delivered until Tishrei. So there's a huge gap over there. So what did the Chacham benefit? Says, well, that everybody knows that it came from overseas, so they know that there's going to be a gap. That everybody's going to know that you can't rely on the date to sue for the collection of the payers. You can't rely on the date to cover up for adultery because everybody knows it came from overseas. Imar me'imosai moinin leget. Now this is an interesting shayla. We know that there's a din of havchana. The din of havchana is that a man that divorces a woman, after the divorce, she has to wait 3 months from getting married again. And the reason is because of havchana. Because otherwise, if she doesn't wait 3 months, and then she gets married and has a premature child, let's say a 7th-month child, we won't know if it's a 7th-month child from the new husband or a 9-month child from the first husband. So therefore, we make them wait 3 months. The question is, do we make them wait 3 months from the date of the get or from the time that the get was delivered? Says, well, let's see it inside. Itmar me'masay moinin leget. Rav Amar Mishas Nasina, we count the 3 months from when the get is delivered. V'Shmuel Amar Mishas Ksiva, we count from the date of the get. Maskav Rav Nasan Bar Aishia l'Shmuel, according to Shmuel, Yomru, they'll say, Shtei Noshim b'chotzer achas, there's 2 women in the same courtyard that get a get both on the same day. Zu Asura, this one is Asur yet another month. V'zu Muteris, and this one is permitted to get married. It's going to look strange. They both got the get on the same day, but according to Shmuel, we don't go basar when the get is delivered. Rather, we go basar when the date. So it doesn't look right. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says no. nobody's going to wonder because they're going to know that the date on one of the women's get was a month earlier. Zuzman gita meichich aleh, v'zuzman gita meichich aleh. We go according to the date. And the Gemara Taka says we have a brisa like Rav and a brisa like Shmuel. Tan kavasei to Rav, tan kavasei to Shmuel. We have a brisa like Rav and we have a brisa like Shmuel as we welcome in Harrison Kletzel. Tan kavasei to Rav. We have a brisa like Rav. Hashalech get le'ishtay. If he sends a get to his wife, v'shnishta shliach b'derech gimel chadoshim, and the shliach tarried on the road for 3 months. Kishegia get liyada, when the get arrives in her hand, so now it's already 3 months from the time it was dated. She has to wait another 3 months because Rav says that you have to wait from the time of the delivery. You should worry about a get yashin. If you have normally a get yashin is a get that's delivered a while after it was written. That's called a old get. Old get is no good because we're afraid that maybe in the interim they made up with each other, and then that abrogates the get. But he says here we're not worried because they weren't near each other. She was in a different place. So the get yashin ain't chayshishin. We're not worried that it's an old get. Shari leinis yachadima. They weren't together. They were in 2 different countries. 2 different places. Tani kavasi to Shmuel. We have a raya to Shmuel. Hamashlish get le'ishtay. If a man entrusts his get to a third party, the man gave the get to Mark and said to Mark that I want you to deliver it to my wife in 3 months. So Amashlish get li'ishtay, he gives the get to a third party. V'amaloi, and he said to him, Al titneu la el lacha gimel chadashim. Obviously, he wanted that when she gets it, she should be able to go out right away. So he wrote it, and he said, don't give it to her for 3 months. Mishenitnula, as soon as he gives it to her, maternis l'naseh miyad. So this is according to the opinion of Shmuel that we go basur the date. It's an old get. There's a 3-month period in between the delivery and when it was written. Well, the get yashin ain't chayshin because they weren't together. They went to. She was in Paris. So now the Gemara tells us Rav Kahana v'Rav Papi v'Rav Ashe of the Mishas Ksiva. They said that you need 3 months for the time that the get was written. Rav Papa, Rav Hunabred, Rav Yeshua of the Mishas Nasina from the time the get was delivered, and V'Hilchasa, the law is the lenient view, Mishas Ksiva, from the time it's written.
This just applies to Midas Hayam or any get?
Anywhere where they're separate from each other. Now, the Gemara class an interesting shayla. You know, the ksuva is a big promissory note. In other words, if he dies or if he divorces her, then he owes her the 200 mana and all the taisvus ksuva. Now, we know that Shemitah relinquishes debts, releases debts. Does it release the ksuva? Now we know from our learning in Masechtas Ksuvas that you could have a ksuva that's owed 25 years. So we see that normally Shemitah doesn't. And the reason why normally Shemitah doesn't is because Shemitah only releases private loans. This is an instrument of the court. This is a Maisa Bezdin. And therefore normally Shemitah will not release the obligation of the ksuva. But it will under certain circumstances. So it says, at what point is the shvua released and the debt of the shvua annulled by Shemitah? Rav Amar Mishetifkaim v'tiskaif. Rav says, if he pays her part of the ksuva, he divorced her, and he paid her part of the ksuva, and she converted the rest of the ksuva into a regular loan, so then it becomes a regular loan, and then the Shemitah will then release it. B'Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Pagma, once she's paid a little bit, Afal Pisha Loy Zakva, even though it wasn't officially converted, but it's automatic. Once it pays it a little bit, the rest is converted to a regular loan. Or Zakva Afal Pisha Loy Pagma, or if she converts it herself into a regular loan, so then Shemitah will release it. Tani Kavasi de Rav, Tani Kavasi de Shmuel, Tani Kavasi de Rav, we have Raya like Rav, Me'emosai Ksuva Mishametes. When does the Ksuva released by Shemitah? When Mishatifkaif, when she's paid partially, and V'tiskaif, and it's converted into a regular loan. Pagma V'loy Zakva, if she was paid partially but it wasn't converted, or Zakva, it was converted V'loy Pagma but it wasn't paid partially, Eina Mishametes, it's not released, Achatifka and V'tiskaif. So that's Rav. Tani Kavasi de Shmuel, Oinus, in the case of rape, Uknas, and the penalty for Moitzi Shemra, for maligning her, saying she didn't have Besulin, Pitoi, the penalty for seduction, and Ksuvas Isha, Shezokfon B'milva, if they're written up as a loan, even if it wasn't partially paid, Mishamtin, Shvius releases it. So that's like Shmuel. V'imlav, but if not, Ein Mishamtin, then it's a Maisa Bezdin, and it's not released. Now, Me'emosai Niskafim B'milva, when does a penalty become a regular loan? Mishas Hamad B'din, once the court issues a verdict, then it becomes a regular loan, and then it is, according to Shmuel, released by Shemitah. Amar Shmuel, Ksuva K'maisa Bezdin Damya. Oh, this is very interesting. Ksuva is like a decision of the court. Ma Maisa Bezdin Nichtovim B'yoyim V'nechtomim B'layla. Just like a Maisa Bezdin could be predated. It could be written in the day and signed at night. Now the reason is because the idea behind a Maisa Bezdin is that the chiyuv is because of the decision of the court, and therefore it's valid even if it wasn't signed yet, because it's activated by the decision of the court. So therefore, even if it's signed on the day and even if it's decided on the day and signed the next night, so that the date was the day before it was signed, it's still good. So af ksuva nichteves b'yayim v'nechteves b'layla. So also the ksuva can be written in the day and signed in the night. Now, what would be the reason for that? Because remember, the ksuva puts a lien on the mortgage property of the husband. So the date is very important, because the date says that anybody that buys from the husband property after the date of the ksuva, his property is indebted to the payment of the ksuva. In other words, the woman has a lien. So why do we say that even though the date happened before it was signed, why do we say that's an accurate time of the lien? So Taisus explains, because the idea of it is when it has a curl, when it is known. And already the fact that it was deliberated on that day is enough to give it a curl, even before it was signed. Ksuvasi de Reb Chia Barav, the Ksuva of Reb Chia Barav, Ichta B'yayim, was written in the day, V'Ichtam B'layla, and signed in the night. Hava Rav Hossam, Rav was there, V'loy Amalu V'loy Midei, he didn't say anything. So that would surely be a proof that Rav holds that it's like a Maisa Bezdin, and it has a lien even though it was dated the day before it was signed. So he says, well, no, here it's talking about where asukin ba'isa inyan have, where they were occupied with discussing the ksuva and its details all the way till the night. Now, since they were occupying and discussing it, that means that the Edom were there waiting to sign. And since the Edom were there waiting to sign, since the Edom were already there, there's already a curl. The Tanya Amar Abelazar Tzadik Lo Shanwel Kisheina Asukim Ba'isa Inyan. There is an opinion that holds that if the ksuva is dated before it was signed, then it's no good. But that's only if they were busy. They weren't busy discussing it. But if they're busy discussing it till the last minute, so that means that the Edom were there from before, that definitely has a curl, and therefore it achieves a lien from the time that it was written, even before it was signed. Of course, you know that by a wedding, this causes a lot of times a headache for the Masada Kedushin, because if the chuppah starts, the ksuva was written before Shkia, so as the date on the day before, and then they get married the next day after Shkia, so that's a problem. So in order to do that, either they make the chasana early, so that the Seder Kedushin will be before Shkia also, or they sign the ksuva. Sometimes you'll see this at a chasana, that they'll prepare the ksuva and everything, but they'll sign the ksuva by the chuppah, so that the ksuva was signed after Shkia, and the marriage is also after the Shkia. Now, Reb Shimon Machshe. Reb Shimon says that even if the get is predated, Reb Shimon says it's okay. I'm a Rava, my time with Reb Shimon. What's the reason of Reb Shimon? So Reb Shimon says because we don't have to worry that the delivery is a different time than the date of the get, because the date of the get tells us when the husband loses his right to collect payers anymore from his wife's property, and that's from the time that the get is written, because that's when he's nosan einov legarsha. The kavan shenosan einov legarsha, once he has in mind to divorce her, shuv ein loy payers. Amar Reish Lakish, so Reish Lakish says that even Reb Shimon, when he says that it's good if the date is not the same day as the delivery, Amar Reish Lakish lo yichsher Reb Shimon al alter, aval mekan asara yomim, but if the get is written on Reish Chodesh Adar, and the get is delivered on Yud Adar, that's not good even according to Reb Shimon. Why? Because that's a problem of the get yoshin. Chayshin on Shema Payis. We're afraid that in the interim he might have mollified her. They might have got back together, and they might have been with each other, which invalidates the get. Reb Yochanan says, "Afilu mekan vad asara yamim." It's good according to Reb Shimon, even if it's 10 days later. Because im isa de payis, because if they made up, kol yislei the milsa, people will know it. Now, if you remember, we learned as we welcome in Yehuda from Har Nov, if you remember, we learned that a husband could insist that the get is only good if it's signed by 10 people. But there's two ways to learn it. If he says kulchem, we're going to see in a minute that if he says to 10 people, write and sign a get, that just means that of the 10, one should write it and 2 of the 10 should sign it. But if he says kulchem, all of you should sign it, then all 10 have to sign. But it's still a question, did he mean all 10 have to be witnesses? Or did he mean 2 should be witnesses and the other 8 is just the fulfillment of the condition? That he wants there to be 10 people. For whatever reason, he wants it to be known, or he wants to stall it, maybe he'll change his mind, whatever the reason is. Now you'll say, what's the difference if all 10 are witnesses, or 2 are witnesses, and 8 are just to fulfill the condition? There's a very simple difference. And that difference is, what would be if one of them is a relative, or one of them is Pasal Eidus. So one of them is a relative, or one of them is Pasal Eidus, so if they all 10 have to be a witness, so then it's no good. But if only 2 have to be a witness, and 8 of them are just to fulfill the condition, the other 8 could be not, there could be somebody that's Pasal Eidus, and it could be somebody that's a relative. We want to welcome in Gedalia, who's joining us. Gedalia, we are learning 3 blot tonight, but for your benefit, we slowed down a little bit, that you should catch us. And we are holding 3 lines from the top of Yud Ches Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top of Yud Ches Amud Beis, and we're learning Le'iloi Nishmas Avram ben Gedalio. The Neshama should have an aliyah on his yahrzeit. Now, Imar, Amala Asara, if Chatzkel tells 10 people, Kisvu get lishti, write a get for my wife. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Shnayim Misham Eidim, 2 are witnesses, Vikulan, and the other 8 is just to fulfill his condition, Misham Tanai. Reish Lakish Amar, no, all 10 have to be Eidim, Kulan Misham Eidim. Now, first of all, the Gemara qualifies that this is not in all cases. If he just told 10 people, write a get and give it to my wife, then you don't need them all to sign. He tells 10 people to write a get for his wife. One writes it. Any 2 of the 10 sign it. It doesn't have to be all 10. So where he says all of them, so Rabbi Yochanan says, of the 10, 2 have a din of witnesses, and 8 are just to fulfill the condition. And Reish Lakish says they're all witnesses. My beinayu. What's the difference between the 2? Ike beinayu the chosim beitrei minayu biyume, where 2 sign on the date, v'inach mekan vad asar yom, and the others sign 10 days later. So we know it has to be. It's not supposed to be predated get. So, manda amamishum tanai, if it's only a condition, then it's kosher. Because the witness is signed on the right day. The other 8 is just to fulfill the condition. Or manda amamishum eidim, but if they all have a din of eidim, then they all have to sign on the day of the get. Then it's possible. Inami. This was a simple nafkamina. Kigain shenim tzeach mem karavay pasal. One of them was a relative or pasal eidus. He was a gambler. So Lamand Amar Mishum Tanai, that you only need 2 kosher eidim, the other 8 are to fulfill just that there's supposed to be 10, so then it's kosher. Lamand Amar Mishum Eidim, that all 10 have to have a din of eidim, you can't have a korav or a gambler an 8, so then it's possible. So now the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that say only 2 are witnesses, so the other 8 could be relatives. What happens if the first signator of the get was a relative? We are on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, and we are by I Chosim, which is 7 lines from the bottom. 7 lines from the bottom of Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. So now the Gemara says, what's the matter? Good? Now the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that you only need 2 witnesses, the other 8 is just to fulfill the Tanai of 10, and they could be relatives. What if the first signator, right after the body of the get, was a relative? So Imre la kosher, some say it's good, Imre la pasal. Imre la kosher, as long as you have 2 that are good, the one that's right next to the body, that was the Tanai, that was just to have the 10. Tanayu. While Imril Apostle, because if somebody sees that the first witness on the get was a brother, and they said the get is good, people might come to say that a brother is good for a get. If it's after the first two signatures, then they'll say, oh, this was extra fluff. But if it's the first signature, they might then say that by other shtaris also a relative is good. Now, Hahuda Amar La'asara, here's an actual case. Chatzkel told 10 people, Kisvu get le'ishti, write a get for my wife. Chosim beitrei minayu b'yumi, it was Reish Chodesh Adar. So 2 of them signed on Reish Chodesh Adar. V'inach mikan v'ad asar yom, and the rest of the 8, some signed Gimel Adar, some signed Zayin Adar, some signed Yud Adar. Also, the Kamid Rabbi Shimon Levi, they brought such a get before Rabbi Shimon Levi. Imre Lei, so he said, look, Rabbi Shimon holds that a predated get is good. Kedayu Rabbi Shimon lismech of b'shas adchak. We could rely on Rabbi Shimon once it's already done. Says the Gemara, but we said, that Reish Lakish said that even according to Rabbi Shimon, it's only if it's signed that night. Otherwise, you're worried about that maybe it's get Yashin, maybe he mollified her. So he says, no, but he Rabbi Yochanan's really. And that he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that even after 10 days, if he mollified her, there would be a curl. Says, but if you're going like Rabbi Yochanan says there's no problem, because he says the other 8 are as a Tanai. And if it's a Tanai, it makes no difference if they signed not on the same day. So why did you say it's going like Rav Shimon that says it's predated is good? According to him, the other 8 could sign on a different day. It's not a problem because they're only to fulfill the Kedushin. But he Reish Lakish really, and that he holds like Reish Lakish, that all 10 have a din of Edom. And now we move on. I want to point out, everybody, it's 59 minutes and 54 seconds, and we're already on the 3rd block. So we're doing good over here.